My name's Rachel, I'm 29 years old, and I'm the oldest kid in my family. I guess you could say we're your typical middle-class crew, nothing fancy, but we've always had enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. My folks, Angela and Jonathan, have owned this cozy little bakery in town for more than 2 decades now. It's kind of a local gem, everybody knows it, and most have a favorite pastry from there. Growing up, we weren't rolling in cash or anything, but we were comfortable. My parents both worked their butts off, and they made sure me and my younger brother, Paul, he's 25 now, understood the value of hard work too. Now, just so you've got some background, it was always crystal clear that Paul was the golden child. Like, painfully obvious. In my parents' eyes, he could walk on water. No matter what he did, they were quick to excuse it, defend it, or spin it like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. He'd slack off in school and somehow still get praised for trying his best. Me? I could have built a rocket and they'd ask if Paul helped. But honestly, I didn't really care. I've never been one to chase attention or fight for the spotlight. I preferred doing my own thing, keeping my head down, staying out of family drama, and working toward my own goals. If Paul needed to be the center of attention to feel good about himself, fine by me. I wasn't trying to compete. And for a long time, it truly didn't bother me. Until recently. Here's where things took a turn. About 5 years back, my granddad passed away. That one hit me hard, we were close. He was the kind of guy who listened, really listened, and always made time for me. When the will was read, I found out he'd left me a trust fund. It wasn't life-changing money like you see on TV, but it was a solid amount, enough to make a real difference if I played it smart. Thing is, there were some rules attached. I wouldn't be able to touch the money until I turned 30, and even then, I could only use it for specific things, like buying a home or going back to school. I was fine with that. I'm not the kind of person who spends recklessly anyway. My plan was simple: let it sit, let it grow, and then use it either to get a small place in the city or maybe finally start that business I've been dreaming about. Everything was quiet on that front, until earlier this year. Paul got engaged to his girlfriend, Nancy. She's 26, and comes from money. Not obnoxiously wealthy, but you can tell she's never had to worry about bills or budgeting. Nancy's got that effortless charm, the kind that makes people want to be around her. She's bubbly, stylish, always saying the right thing, the kind of person that just shines in a room. At first, I liked her. Really, I did. But then, things started getting weird. It all began at a family dinner a few months ago. We were sitting around, laughing and eating, when out of nowhere, Nancy casually dropped a question about my trust fund. Just like that, like we were talking about the weather. She asked what I planned to do with the money once I could finally access it. I was a little taken aback. It felt super personal, but I didn't want to make it awkward, so I just kind of shrugged and said maybe I'd get an apartment or launch a business. What else could I say? I sure wasn't about to lay out my financial plans in the middle of dinner. Then she hits me with this big, beaming smile and says, "Wow, that's so lucky. You know, Paul and I could really use a little help for the wedding, or maybe even a down payment on a house." I laughed, thinking it had to be a joke. Paul kind of laughed too, though it was more nervous than amused. But Nancy just kept looking at me, like she was expecting me to jump up and say, "Sure, have it all." It got uncomfortable real quick. Thankfully, my parents stepped in and said something like, "That money belongs to Rachel, it's not up for discussion." That seemed to shut things down for the night. But the vibe lingered. And it only got worse from there. After that dinner, it felt like Nancy had lit a fuse. Every time we were together, holidays, birthdays, Sunday brunch, she'd circle back to it. Not head-on, but in this passive-aggressive, sugar-coated way. She'd say stuff like, "It's just so incredible that you have that kind of opportunity. Most people never get the chance to really support their family like that." At first, I just brushed it off. I'd change the subject or give a polite laugh. But she wasn't letting it go. And eventually, Paul started chiming in too. At first, he was quiet, like maybe he wasn't on board with her line of thinking. But then he began making these offhand comments, like, well, it's not like you're using the money right now, or I kind of get where Nancy's coming from. So I tried going to my parents, hoping they'd talk some sense into them. But instead of being outraged, my mom just sighed and said, Nancy's only trying to feel like part of the family. She's not trying to be pushy. Pushy? I hadn't even said that word. But yes, she was absolutely being pushy. I felt like I was being painted as the villain for simply wanting to keep what was rightfully mine. I wasn't trying to stir the pot or create drama, but I also wasn't about to hand over a dime of money I couldn't even access yet. Plus, I had my own dreams tied up in that trust. Still, I figured if I stayed calm and stood my ground, this would all blow over eventually. Then came the kicker. One night, after another tense family dinner, Nancy pulled me aside like she had something serious to get off her chest. And she just came out with it, no sugarcoating this time. She said, Rachel, I really think you should reconsider how you're planning to use that money. Helping Paul and me would be such a meaningful way to show you care about your family. Don't you think it's kind of selfish to keep it to yourself when it's just sitting there? I just stood there, stunned. No one had ever straight up called me selfish before. Not like that. I tried to keep my cool and told her the truth, that the money wasn't even available yet, and when it was, I already had plans for it. She looked at me like I'd just spit in her drink. Then she said, I guess I misunderstood what kind of person you are. The next day, Paul gave me a call. He said he wanted to apologize for what happened, but honestly, it didn't come off as sincere. He kind of brushed it off, saying Nancy was just overwhelmed with all the wedding stuff and didn't mean to come off so intense. But then he added, still, she's not wrong. You are in a spot where you could help out. It wouldn't hurt to at least think about it. That was the moment I really started questioning myself. Was I being selfish? Was I making a big deal out of something that wasn't? I felt like maybe I was the problem. So, I reached out to a couple close friends, people I trust, and laid it all out for them. Every single one of them said I wasn't in the wrong, and that helped, but not enough to shake the heaviness of it all. It wasn't just about the awkward conversations anymore. It was this growing sense that my own family wasn't in my corner. My parents, who I'd always believed would have my back no matter what, seemed more concerned about keeping things smooth than standing up for me. They were walking this tightrope, trying to avoid conflict, but in doing so, they were letting this whole situation spiral. I was starting to get the sinking feeling that this wasn't going away. Nancy didn't seem like the type to drop things quietly, and Paul? Well, he was clearly willing to go along with whatever she wanted. My parents were just stuck in the middle, nodding along and avoiding the hard conversations. I had no idea how far this was going to go, but one thing I did know, I wasn't giving in. I couldn't. Was I overreacting? Honestly, I wasn't sure anymore. What do you think? Hey, friends. Didn't expect to be back with an update so soon, but, yeah, things have gotten way worse. Like, seriously worse. I feel like I'm living in some bizarre reality show and I can't find the exit. Here's what's gone down since my last post. After that awful talk with Nancy, where she basically called me selfish, I started noticing a shift in how people acted around me. Nothing dramatic, but it was definitely there. Nancy would give me these tight, polite smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Paul started pulling away, not totally cold, but distant. My parents were still pretending everything was fine, still stuck in let's all get along mode, but even they seemed off. Then Nancy started pushing harder. At every family event, she'd somehow find a way to corner me. Like she couldn't resist the urge to circle back to the money. One night, while everyone else was watching a movie, she pulled me aside again and said, Rachel, I've been thinking, maybe you could give us just a portion of the trust fund as a wedding gift. Nothing huge, just enough to help with a down payment. I mean, seriously? Who does that? A wedding gift? I was floored. I reminded her, again, that I couldn't even access the money yet, and even when I could, I had plans for it. I was calm and polite about it, but inside, I was ready to scream. She just stared at me, totally unimpressed, like I'd just refused to help an injured puppy. Then she goes, "I thought you cared about your family. This could mean everything to Paul and me. It's not like you even need it right now." I was speechless. The entitlement was unreal. I didn't bother saying anything else, I just walked away. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, she started getting more strategic. Like she was trying to sell me on the idea. She started talking about it like I'd be investing in our family's future by giving them the money. Seriously. An investment. Like I'd see a return or something. I couldn't help but laugh at how absurd it sounded. I mean, what did she think? Was I supposed to fund their life and expect them to send me thank you dividends every quarter? The worst part? Paul was slowly getting sucked into her line of thinking. He hadn't outright asked me for anything yet, but he started dropping little hints. "You're in such a strong position, Rachel. You could really make a difference for us." It felt like he was testing me, pushing the boundary a little more each time, seeing how far he could go before I snapped. I tried talking to my parents again, thinking maybe now they'd step in. I told them everything, how Nancy had cornered me, what she was saying, how uncomfortable I felt. But instead of backing me up, my mom said, "Nancy just wants to feel like part of the family. And you know Paul's always had it a bit tougher financially than you." Tougher? That made my blood boil. We grew up under the same roof. Same rules, same meals, same schools. The only difference was that I busted my ass to save money and make a plan for my future, while Paul floated through life with a safety net. Then my dad chimed in with, "We're not saying you should give them the money. Just, maybe think about it. Sometimes keeping the peace is more important than being right." Keeping the peace. That's what this had come to. They wanted me to compromise so everyone else could feel better, even if it meant giving up something that was meant for my future. It hit me right then, this wasn't just about Nancy anymore. My parents were enabling her. Maybe they didn't mean to, maybe they just wanted things to go smoothly, but the result was the same, they were letting her push me around. Then came the final straw. Nancy and Paul invited me out to lunch a few weeks later. I thought it was going to be a normal sibling hangout, some light chatter, catch up on wedding plans, maybe even a break from all the tension. But the second I sat down, I knew I'd been set up. We made some small talk at first, but it didn't last long. Nancy leaned in and hit me with it, "Rachel, we've been thinking, what if you gave us half the trust fund? You'd still have plenty left for your own goals, and we could finally get started without all this stress." Half. She actually said half. I took a deep breath and, as calmly as I could, told her, again, that the money wasn't accessible yet, and even if it were, I wasn't planning to give any of it away. Not now, not later. That's when her whole tone shifted. She started talking like I was hoarding it, like I was this greedy dragon sitting on a pile of gold while my family suffered. She said it wasn't fair for me to keep it all when it could help everyone. And right on cue, Paul backed her up. "I get where you're coming from, Rachel, but Nancy's got a point. This could really change things for us. You're in such a good place to help." I just sat there, stunned. My own brother, someone I've known my whole life, was basically telling me to sacrifice my future because it would make theirs easier. After that exhausting lunch with Paul and Nancy, I left feeling like I'd just been ambushed. It was 2 against 1 the whole time, and by the time I got home, I felt completely wrung out, mentally and emotionally. A few days later, my parents called and asked me to come over. They said it was for a family discussion, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. The second I walked in, I saw Paul and Nancy already sitting in the living room, looking smug, like they'd been waiting for this. My dad started off with, "We just want to bring some peace back into the family." Then came the kicker, "Rachel, maybe it's time you think about giving them a portion of the trust fund. Not half, just something. A gesture." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents were now joining the campaign to pressure me into giving up part of my inheritance. All for Nancy's peace of mind. I told them no. This time I didn't sugarcoat it. I was direct, clear, and firm. Then I walked out. Since then, it's only gone downhill. Nancy, apparently not content with just bothering me, started telling her version of events to the extended family. And guess what? That opened the floodgates. I started getting texts and calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, cousins, aunts, uncles, all chiming in to tell me I was being selfish and that I should do the right thing. I honestly feel like I'm losing it. How did this become my fault? How did my entire family buy into this narrative where I'm the villain? I've done everything I could to keep boundaries in place, but no one respects them. It's like I'm shouting into the wind. I've even started thinking about legal options. Maybe there's something I can do to protect the trust fund or officially make it clear that I won't be giving any of it away. But the thought of going that far, of actually taking legal action against my own family, makes me sick to my stomach. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Just needed to get it off my chest. If anyone's got advice, I'm listening. Because right now, I'm barely holding it together. I don't even know how many more updates there'll be. This thing keeps snowballing, and I'm just trying to keep my head above water. The sad part is, I'm realizing this isn't even about Nancy anymore. It's bigger than that now. My whole family is unraveling over this trust fund drama, and no one seems to care about how it's affecting me. After the mess that was the lunch with Paul and Nancy, when they outright asked me for half the trust fund, I honestly thought things might calm down. I figured I'd made myself clear. I mean, how many different ways can a person say no? Apparently, not enough. Then my dad called and asked me to come by the house for a chat. His voice was all smooth and cheerful, which made me suspicious immediately. I asked if this had anything to do with Paul and Nancy, and my mom jumped in with, "Not exactly, but it's important." Against my better judgment, I went. And of course, when I walked in, there they were, Paul and Nancy, sitting on the couch like they were about to present a PowerPoint. Their smiles were so fake, I almost laughed. My mom waved me toward the other chair, and that's when it hit me, this wasn't a casual check-in. This was an ambush. It started with small talk. My dad asked how I was, how work was going. The usual filler. But it didn't take long for the real agenda to surface. My mom leaned forward and said, "Rachel, we've all been feeling a lot of tension, and we just want to find a way to move past it." Yeah. I saw where this was headed. I glanced at Paul and Nancy, and sure enough, Nancy was giving me that familiar tight-lipped, patronizing smile. My dad added, "We think it would be best if we could find some sort of compromise." I raised an eyebrow. Compromise? What exactly are you asking me to do? Paul looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to say it out loud. But he finally spoke up. "Rachel, we know you've got your own plans for the trust fund, and we totally respect that. But Nancy and I are in a really difficult spot right now. The wedding, setting up a home, it's a lot. Even just a little help from you would mean so much." Nancy jumped in right away, "Exactly. It doesn't have to be a big amount. Just something to show you care. This isn't just about money, it's about family." There it was again, that word. Family. They kept throwing it around like it was supposed to override logic. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. I've said this over and over. The trust fund isn't available yet. And when it is, I already have plans for it. I'm not handing it out just to make people feel better. My dad shifted in his seat. "We're not asking you to give away half. Just, maybe consider helping them out a little. It could ease some of the tension in the family." I stared at him. So let me get this straight. I'm supposed to hand over money I don't even have access to, just to make everyone stop arguing? That's the solution? Paul sighed like he was the one worn out. "It's not just about the money, Rachel. It's about showing you care. You're in a great position right now, and this could really help us get started. I looked over at Nancy. Her smile was gone now. What I saw instead was this look of quiet victory, like she thought I was about to cave. This isn't fair, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've worked hard to build a future for myself. That money is a part of that. Why should I have to sacrifice it just because you two decided to get married? Nancy's face hardened. It's not about fairness, Rachel. It's about family. Paul and I are trying to start something meaningful, and you're in a position to help. It wouldn't even hurt you. Before I could reply, my mom jumped in. Her voice was soft, but what she said hit just as hard. Rachel, I think what Nancy's trying to say is that this could be a chance to bring us closer together. Sometimes, it's better to bend a little than to hold on so tightly to something. I looked around that room and realized, I wasn't just fighting for the trust fund anymore. I was fighting for the right to have boundaries, to be respected, and to not be guilt-tripped into handing over a piece of my future. And no one in that room seemed to care. It was hard to wrap my head around the fact that my own parents, the same people who had always been there for me, were now taking Nancy's side. I finally let some of the frustration out. I'm not clinging to the trust fund like some greedy dragon, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm just following the rules that are literally written into it. And I have my own plans I've worked hard for. Why is that so hard for everyone to get? There was this long, heavy silence. No one said a word until Nancy broke it, cold and sharp. You know what, Rachel? I think the real problem is that you're just not willing to put family first. Paul and I have always supported you, and now that we need something, you're shutting us out. It's honestly really disappointing. That was the last straw. I stood up, heart pounding. I'm not shutting anyone out, I told her. I'm just not handing over what you want. That doesn't make me a bad sister, and it sure as hell doesn't make me selfish. I looked around the room, the faces of people I used to trust now just staring back at me like I was the problem. This is my money. It's my future. And I'm done having this conversation. As I turned to leave, my dad called after me. Rachel, wait, don't leave like this. We're just trying to find a solution that works for everyone. I paused at the door, looked back at them, and said, no. You're trying to find a solution that works for Paul and Nancy. That's what this meeting was about. If you can't see how one-sided and unfair this is, then there's nothing left to say. And I walked out. Since then, things have only gotten colder. I'd barely spoken to my parents. Paul and Nancy? They've gone totally silent, which, honestly, has been a weird kind of relief. But the silence doesn't make it any easier. What really hurts is how isolated I've started to feel. I used to believe my family would always have my back. Now I'm not sure they ever really did. And all of this? It's over money I can't even touch yet. I don't know what comes next. Part of me wants to cut them all off completely and move on. But there's still that stubborn piece of me holding out hope that maybe, somehow, things could go back to the way they were. For now, I'm just trying to focus on myself. I've been working hard to tune out the noise, but it's hard when the people who are supposed to love you the most are also the ones tearing you down. I really mean that. You guys have been the only source of clarity in all this chaos. I'm back with another update, and if I'm being honest, things have gone from bad to downright ugly. After weeks of being cornered, guilt-tripped, and painted as the villain, I finally reached a point where I couldn't just keep hoping it would blow over. I had to take a stand. Not because I wanted to. Because I didn't have a choice anymore. After that last blowout at my parents' house, I took a few days to try and process everything. But it felt like the pressure just kept piling up. Every day, I'd get a new text, call, or passive-aggressive message from someone in the family telling me I was being selfish, that I needed to think about what's really important. No one seemed to care that the trust fund isn't even accessible yet, or that I legally can't do what they're asking. All they see is a pile of money, and they want me to hand it over like it's no big deal. The tipping point came when I got a call from my cousin, Rachel. She's one of the few people in the family who's actually been supportive through all of this. She told me something that left me stunned. Apparently, Nancy's been going around at family events spreading rumors about me. Things like, Rachel doesn't care about anyone but herself, and it's so sad to see someone put money above family. I felt sick. Nancy's not just manipulative, she's downright malicious. But the worst part? Rachel also told me that Nancy had been asking other relatives questions about my finances. Trying to figure out how much money I had and whether there was a way she could get access to it. That was it. That was the moment I realized I needed to protect myself. I booked an appointment with a local estate attorney who specializes in trust law. I explained everything, how the trust fund works, what's been happening with my family, and what Nancy's been doing behind my back. She was stunned. She told me flat out that what Nancy was doing, pressuring me, spreading lies, digging into my private finances, could very well be considered harassment. The good news? She said the trust is airtight. Legally, no one but me will have access to it when the time comes. That was a huge weight off my shoulders. But that didn't mean I was in the clear. My lawyer told me to start keeping records. Screenshots of texts, copies of emails, notes on every conversation, anything that could show a pattern of harassment or manipulation. And if things escalated, she said it might be time to send a cease and desist letter. So that's what I did. I spent hours combing through my phone, saving every guilt-tripping text from Paul, every snide message from Nancy, even my mom's "just think about it" comments. I created a folder and saved everything. It felt awful. Like I was building a case against my own family. But at this point, I didn't know what else to do. Meanwhile, Nancy kept pushing. She started posting vague but pointed messages on social media about toxic family members and people who care more about money than love. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. The comments made it obvious who she was targeting. And then people started reaching out. Old acquaintances, friends I hadn't heard from in years, asking me what was going on. But it didn't stop online. The real world came knocking when one of my coworkers pulled me aside and said, "Hey, just so you know, someone's been calling HR and asking about your salary." They claimed to be a family member. I was horrified. I couldn't prove it was Nancy, but honestly, who else would go that far? The timing lined up too perfectly, and she was the only one digging around in my personal life. That night, I called my lawyer again. I told her everything, the social media posts, the gossip, and now someone trying to snoop into my financials at work. She didn't hesitate. "It's time to send the cease and desist," she said. The cease and desist letter was firm, but not aggressive. Just professional and to the point. It laid out everything, how Nancy's behavior had crossed a line, how it needed to stop immediately, and that if it didn't, legal action could be the next step. Sending it made me feel sick to my stomach. I never wanted things to get this far. I didn't want lawyers involved, but she left me no other choice. I had to protect myself. A couple days later, the fallout started. Paul called me, absolutely livid. "What the hell, Rachel? You really sent a legal letter to my fiancé? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for us?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. "Paul, I didn't want to. But Nancy has been harassing me nonstop. She's crossed every line imaginable. I'm done being pushed around." He didn't hear me. Or maybe he just didn't want to. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," he snapped. "She was just trying to make you understand her side. This is about family, not money." That part hit me hard. I told him, if this was really about family, then why is Nancy spreading lies behind my back? Why is she digging into my finances like it's her business? That's not what family does. The call ended with him mumbling that he needed time to cool off. Since then, things have been quieter, but definitely not better. Nancy stopped posting her passive-aggressive rants online, and I haven't heard from her directly. But my parents? Oh, they're furious. My mom called, her tone sharp. You didn't have to turn this into a legal issue, Rachel. You could have just talked to us. I reminded her, again, that I had talked to them. Repeatedly. And every time, they brushed me off or tried to guilt me into giving in. Of course, that didn't change her mind. So now, I'm in full protection mode. I've got all the texts saved, my lawyers on standby, and everything's documented. I don't want to go any further, but at least I feel like I'm not completely helpless anymore. Still, I can't shake the pain of it all. I just wish my family could see how much this whole thing has hurt me. I don't know how I'd be getting through this without a place to let it all out. I promised I'd keep you all in the loop, and wow, did things take a turn I never saw coming. Life has a funny way of pulling the mask off people when you least expect it. So, here's what happened. The cease and desist letter worked, at least at first. Nancy went radio silent. No more cryptic posts online. No more random messages. For a moment, it felt like maybe, things would settle down. But my parents and Paul? They weren't about to let it go. My mom called me again, and this time she didn't bother hiding her anger. Do you have any idea how much damage that letter caused? Nancy's humiliated. The whole family's whispering about us now. I was already tired before she even finished her sentence. Mom, I said, exhausted. Nancy harassed me. She turned the family against me, dug into my private life, and flat out refused to respect my boundaries. What else was I supposed to do? And of course, her response? You could have handled it better. You don't bring lawyers into family matters. I hung up. I was done explaining myself to people who didn't want to listen. But then, something happened. Something none of us could have predicted. Paul messed up. He accidentally sent a group text, meant just for Nancy, to the entire family group chat. That chat included me, our parents, and a few cousins. And that one mistake? It changed everything. The first message said, I found the messages you sent to your friends about Rachel and the trust fund. Are you serious? You've been bragging about securing the bag this whole time? Then he attached the screenshots. Real screenshots. Of messages Nancy had sent to a friend, mocking me, bragging about how she was manipulating the situation, and openly saying she was relying on my parents to break me down. One of her texts literally said, Don't worry. Jonathan and Angela will pressure Rachel into giving me the money. She's too soft to hold out forever. Another one read, Rachel's so obsessed with her little business dream that she doesn't even realize how selfish she's being. That trust should have been split among the family. Then came the final blow, Paul's follow-up text, I can't believe you've been manipulating everyone, including me, just to get your hands on money that isn't even yours. This stops now. The group chat went dead silent for a few seconds. Then all hell broke loose. Paul quickly followed with, oh no. That wasn't meant for this chat. I'm so sorry. But it was way too late. My mom was the first to respond. Nancy, what is this? Is it true? Then my dad, Nancy, you told us you were trying to work things out peacefully. Were you lying this whole time? Nancy tried to spin it. These are being taken out of context. I was just venting to a friend about the stress of wedding planning. You're all misunderstanding. But no one bought it. Not this time. Paul stayed quiet in the chat, probably realizing there was no walking this one back. Later that night, he called me. His voice was shaky. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I was going to confront her privately, but I accidentally hit the wrong chat. I didn't mean for you to find out like that. I didn't yell. I just asked him, why didn't you say anything sooner? You've been defending her for months while she's been pulling all this behind the scenes. I didn't know how bad it was, he said. I found the messages on her phone by accident and I couldn't believe it. I was trying to figure out how to talk to her without causing a disaster. He paused. His voice cracked. I let her manipulate me, Rachel. I thought she was just being passionate about our future. But now I see how far she took it. I'm so sorry for everything, Paul said quietly. I let out a long sigh. It was hard to untangle everything I felt in that moment: anger, sadness, and, somewhere in there, pity. Paul, I said, I've been trying to tell you this for months. Nancy was never about the family. She was about getting what she wanted, no matter who she hurt. I appreciated that he finally saw the truth, but I couldn't let him think an apology would magically fix everything. Look, I appreciate you owning up to it. But fixing this? It's going to take more than just saying sorry. He didn't argue. He just agreed, and then kind of vanished. I think he needed time to process everything. The fallout from those texts? Immediate and intense. Later, my cousin Rachel, the one person who'd had my back through all of this, told me the family group chat had practically caught fire after I left it. Messages were flying for hours. Some of the same relatives who'd been calling me selfish were now walking their words back, saying they hadn't realized what was really going on. People were finally seeing Nancy for who she was. But Nancy? She wasn't about to go down without a fight. Over the next few days, she started damage control. She called family members one by one, trying to rewrite the story. She said the texts were just jokes taken out of context. Claimed I'd exaggerated everything. Blamed wedding stress. But the screenshots didn't lie, and by that point, most of the family wasn't buying it. Her excuses didn't stick. The charm that once had everyone wrapped around her finger had finally worn off. As for Paul, he stayed quiet. Didn't say much for a while. Then he called again, and this time his voice was different. Tired. Resigned. I ended things with Nancy, he said. I couldn't stay with someone who would treat my family like that. I can't believe I let it go this far. I could hear the regret in every word. But as much as I felt for him, it didn't erase the months of pain he'd let happen. I'm glad you're finally seeing it for what it is, I told him. But you need to figure out why you let her manipulate you. And why you defended her, even when all the signs were right there. That's where we left it for now. And that's it, for the moment, anyway. Thank you all so much for your support and comments. I honestly don't think Paul will go back to Nancy, but who knows? If anything wild happens, I'll be back. Otherwise, this might be the last update. Here it is, the final update. I never imagined this whole situation would spiral the way it did, but I'm finally at a place where I can breathe again. I can close this chapter for good. Nancy didn't go quietly. Rachel told me she'd overheard Nancy venting at a family gathering before she stopped showing up. Nancy was apparently saying, none of this would have happened if Rachel had just done the right thing. In her mind, I guess, this was still all my fault. Word got around that her wedding plans had completely fallen apart. The high-end venue she'd booked? Cancelled. That dreamy designer dress she loved? Returned. Turns out, she'd been counting on my money to fund her perfect Pinterest wedding. And once that plan blew up, so did everything else. Eventually, she vanished from social media. Stopped showing up to family events. Went totally silent. And honestly? That silence was the first peace I'd felt in months. Of course, the damage she caused didn't disappear overnight. But slowly, things started to shift. My parents, who had been some of Nancy's biggest defenders, started reaching out again. I think the shock of everything finally hit them. My dad was the first to admit they'd messed up. And then my mom, who had stood behind Nancy through the worst of it, finally looked me in the eye and said, I'm sorry, Rachel. I should have believed you sooner. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix everything. But it was a start. From that point on, I started rebuilding. I cut Nancy out of my life entirely. No contact, no lingering ties. She's gone for good. I also set firm, clear boundaries with Paul and my parents. We talk now, but on my terms. Paul, for his part, is separated from Nancy and finally doing the work. He apologized sincerely, really sincerely, and even started going to therapy to unpack everything that happened and how he got wrapped up in it. My parents have also expressed real regret. They're starting to understand just how badly they let this situation spin out of control. It'll take time. Trust doesn't come back overnight. But at least we're heading in the right direction. This whole nightmare taught me something I'll never forget: the importance of protecting your peace, standing your ground, and not letting guilt push you into abandoning yourself. For the first time in a long time, I feel calm. My life is mine again. I'm back to focusing on my goals, my happiness, and the future I've worked so hard to build. It's been a wild, exhausting ride, but I made it through. And now, I'm finally free to move forward. On my terms.